Ultimate Wolverine has been honestly a really fun read since it began. And I know it has been a good while since I had covered Ultimate Wolverine since issue 1. I'm sorry, I kind of got away from it for a second there, but some of the issues just went by a bit too quickly for me to make a full video on. But now we got 4 full issues, so I'm just gonna go right into all these because not only do we see more of Ultimate Wolverine being the Winter Soldier in this universe and applicating his abilities in a very fun way against multiple different opponents, but we get more world building as to how this side of the universe and how mutants in general outside of the Ultimate X-Men line are living in this world and how they are being treated, primarily in the Eurasian Republic, where the Rasputin siblings kind of have control over it, as well as giving us more backstory and insight into Logan as he became the Winter Soldier, and more clues about his full-on past with the opposition. So let's just jump right into the events of issues 2 through 5. Now, issue 2 is going to be relatively quick. I'm not going to go full detail beat by beat. Issue 2 actually starts off with the Maker finding the person that was in charge of the Weapon X program that would have initially given Logan his adamantium skeleton, and ends up killing him and burning down his laboratory, or more so his research office, thus preventing the Weapon X program from ever being founded and from it ever beginning, thus weakening Logan's second biggest advantage in a fight against many opponents, which is his adamantium skeleton. So that is already a big departure for the change. But with the Winter Soldier program, Logan, after getting abducted and experimented on, did go through the adamantium skeleton encasement, so now he has what he initially had originally, just now he's in the Maker's Council's hands as the ultimate weapon. Now, after the events of issue 1, the Rasputins, after, having Colossus literally beat down Wolverine to try and show him who's in charge, they question Wolverine's whole mental state and how his memories are seemingly erased. And yeah, he's dreaming, but they're questioning his loyalty and his usefulness. And so they sent a bunch of their soldiers out in the wilderness to track down and take down Wolverine. But Wolverine not only finds them, but he quickly dispatches and takes them out, succeeding in his usefulness being proven to the Rasputins. But that is only how issue 2 comes to be. It gives us a bit of the idea of how Logan ended up not having the adamantium skeleton, how his initial Weapon X program past wasn't part of his history in this universe, but also shows just the Rasputins had their doubts to an extent, but just wanted to confirm things. Issue 3 is where things get crazy, because we end up seeing this world's version of Kitty Pryde and Gambit, as well as Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, as she was recruited by Archangel in this universe to fight for the opposition and the mutant cause. As we see that Gambit and Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat, are opposition leaders and are running kind of a smuggling ring to help get mutants out to a safe location. All this is going on while Logan is trying to sniff them out and find their hideout. And we then get a bit of backstory. We go over what Remy and Kitty have been doing in terms of being part of the opposition, taking out leaders and locations key to the Republic, and also how Natasha has betrayed the Republic. And so now we have Logan with the Special Ops unit, with adamantium bullets to take him out if he ever gets out of control, to search for them. But we see that Gambit had set up some playing chess pieces with stored kinetic energy that would end up going off automatically if triggered. And obviously, Logan takes one of the guys, tosses him at these things, and has it explode in his face, kind of sending them all off, thus clearing their pathway since, they were out of the way. And so now they have a clear pathway to get to the Resistance hideout. Kitty and Natasha get the van that they need, and they try and get out of their base, while Gambit tries to hold them off. For some reason, Gambit and Kitty are kind of a thing in this universe, which I don't know how to feel about. They seem close enough in age in this version, I guess. It's a weird continuity thing, but we'll leave it at that for now. So all the opposition members are getting ready to welcome Wolverine as he comes in to try and take him out. Wolverine breaks through the door with his adamantium claws and charges at Gambit as Gambit fights him off, while Wolverine is slicing and dicing through all of the opposition members guarding the truck so that Black Widow can get them to go away. But Logan then, after getting caught in an explosion, manages, as they leave the cave, to grab onto the truck and go inside to try and fight off and kill all the people in the truck. As Kitty sees him and recognizes that he is Logan. Obviously, she can turn intangible, so Logan can't land a hit on her. But when Kitty is trying to reach him, she actually puts her hand through his skull and kind of does what like Cassandra Nova did in the Deadpool and Wolverine movie by sticking her fingers through his skull, trying to like phase through into his brain and like mess with his memories to get him to remember. As we see multiple instances of his past and what happened, him as a kid, him meeting up with Kitty, him fighting with wolves, him fighting a sentinel, which is an interesting thing to know about, and him being experimented on. Now this messed with his head a good amount, and so Kitty managed to kick him off of the truck, and so they managed to get away, as she's wondering why doesn't Logan remember, with Logan on the ground on the floor as his mission has failed. Now issue 4 is an interesting because essentially half the book is done as a bit of a metaphor of a giant polar bear and a lone Wolverine fighting and ripping at each other's throats. And this is meant to be narrated over by a bunch of soldiers just in a room where Logan is being held, trying to wait for the professor to try and like resedate him and just help with his reprogramming. And with the chaos of all of the voices and the voice text boxes, shows that he is fighting, going on a rampage in the room, slicing and dicing people all up, all with the images of this Wolverine, scarred and broken, getting up and still fighting as relentless as ever, cutting back to an image of him as the Wolverine, and as we still get to see this white polar bear fighting this Wolverine, we actually cut back to the room where the professor manages to get Logan to stop, but we see a massacre of soldiers and doctors as Logan is just standing there in a pool of their blood. As they manage to restrain Logan, they take him away, as they want to reprogram him, as what Kitty did seems to have actually like loosened something, and I like the portrayal of the Wolverine fighting the polar bear, kind of showcasing Logan's subconscious and his memories getting shaken loose to try and keep fighting that mental reprogramming so that he can come back to his senses. Kind of a representation of his mind trying to heal, but the brainwashing was so strong that it is keeping him at bay. And the end of this issue is incredibly disturbing, as we go to a very secure room where the professor is taking Logan, and as they enter it, they reveal what is known as the Phoenix specimen, and going in this giant container, we see held up by multiple wires and tubes in a Phoenix suit, in probably a very disturbing panel and page, is Jean Grey just held up, fully sedated, with a brain above her head. And so they're planning to use her to kind of re-brainwash him. And this obviously is, from issue 1, the telepath that they were talking about that helped with the mind and memory erasure and the reprogramming of Wolverine. But what makes this interesting is that at the end of this issue, there is a transcript that kind of goes over Xavier, Cerebro, and Phoenix Jean Grey, as they talk about Omega level mutants, how they sedated Jean Grey with how strong her telekinetic abilities were, but to help keep her under control, they took the deceased Charles Xavier's brain as a way to kind of temper her and keep her sedated so they can fully control her mind. Also, based off of this transcript, it showcases that Magneto in this universe is unfortunately dead, according to it, which it's disappointed. I really was honestly really hoping that the opposition leader was actually Magneto, like Ultimate Magneto in this universe. That would have been nice, considering that we have a lot of like X-Men characters in this title working as the opposition, and they kind of are X-Men to an extent, outside of, the characters in the Ultimate X-Men line, which don't worry, I will make a video going over the issues I've missed soon, so don't worry, I'll make a video on that. But I just feel like it would have been really nice that in this big, obviously fascist dictatorship type of world that we are in the Ultimate Universe, that it would be kind of fitting for Magneto to be the one to lead this opposition group, but seemingly he is dead in this universe, so that's kind of disappointing, but hey, this universe has not let me down, and I am honestly really excited to see what happens next. But issue 5 was definitely the main factor to just kick me into gear and just talk about the issues I've missed. Issue 4 was definitely poking at me, but issue 5 was like, okay, I have enough to talk about. We start this off at an old pub in the Eurasian Republic, as when it closes up, we see a man with a white beard, who we later learn is actually this version of Sabretooth, as he smuggled some mutant kids and is making them something to eat, and later makes them a Shirley Temple. And it's actually like telling them a bunch of stories, like stories of him and Logan. And in this universe, which is crazy to believe, Sabretooth and Logan are friends, buddies that respect each other. And Sabretooth is someone that is incredibly happy to talk about his close friend. If you don't know anything about mainline continuity, Sabretooth, for lack of a better term, is a psychotic dick. And like, literally, he does everything he can to torture Logan and does kind of like the most messed up stuff possible, almost just for shits and giggles. So seeing a version of Sabretooth that not only seems to be a genuinely good person, but is buddies with someone who would have been his mortal enemy is something I was not expecting. But after prepping stuff for the kids, he goes outside to take out the trash. But then he hears a plane fly overhead, and he rushes to the kids. One of them being Leech, who I kind of like because Leech is a mutant that kind of can negate the mutant abilities of people that he touches or is around. So really nice to have Leech in here. But Sabretooth gets the kids to hide underneath the tavern as they don't want a scan to find them there. And they think that there's a shield, and he has a shield in place to kind of keep them from being detected. He locks up the bar, and as we get this suspensefulness of someone trying to open up the pub and him locking the door, he then opens up once the chattering stops to see what's going on. And turns out it was essentially a drunk trying to get into his pub. But once Sabretooth goes back inside, he sniffs and goes behind the counter and realizes, so, the rumors are true. Back from the dead, eh, Logan? Smells off. Something about you's changed. Smells almost rotten. As Logan is just sitting there on the counter, staring at Sabretooth. As Sabretooth realizes that there's definitely something off. He's not quite dead, but he's not himself. Logan unsheathes his adamantium claws and charges at Sabretooth. Sabretooth brings him up close and says that with how he's acting and how he's fighting, he can tell that they messed with his mind, that they brainwashed him, erased his memories, or just reprogrammed him. But Logan then slices off Sabretooth's right arm, and as he's bleeding and starting to heal a bit now, Logan keeps charging at him, as Sabretooth gets ready to rip off his mask. And in a bunch of brutal panels, we see that Logan and Sabretooth are just slashing and dashing at each other and stabbing each other brutally as blood spews all over the place, as we cut back to a time when Logan and Sabretooth, as opposition members, were just sitting by a campfire and just having a drink. But Logan ends up telling Sabretooth to promise him something. That if they ever get him, if they ever mess with his mind, for Sabretooth to do everything in his power to kill him. And even though Sabretooth's like, okay, look, we have a really big healing factor that's going to be borderline impossible, I'll do what you can. If that's really what you want, I'll do it. As we cut back and forth in their conversation and the action going on, as eventually Sabretooth is stabbed in the side by Wolverine. But Sabretooth, after the claws retract, grabs and throws Wolverine onto the side. He manages to get up, regenerating his arm, pins Logan to the ground, and removes his mask, staring him in the face. But what he sees is just Wolverine being a feral animal, sharp, jagged teeth, as he then chomps down on Sabretooth's neck. And afterwards, he actually bites off his own tongue. Don't know why he did that, but it is what it is. But Logan then tries to go on to try and stab and kill Sabretooth until the door opens up, as we see Natasha, as she then manages to use a sedative on Logan, catching him off guard. She then kicks him and knocks him unconscious. And his healing factor isn't working thanks to Leech. And so issue 5 ends with them taking Logan into the back of their truck, presumably to their base, maybe to help break the brainwashing, as Sabretooth comes along, as well with the two kids to their safe spot. And that ends the issue. Honestly, this was really, really cool. I like the idea of there being a Sabretooth that is actually a genuinely good person, separates itself from the main continuity in a very big way, and also it shows that one of the only characters that can go blow for blow with Logan is Sabretooth, and having him being on the side of the opposition, the actual good guys in this story, was honestly a nice change of pace, and I really, really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see how things go from here. But yeah, Ultimate Wolverine has been extending the lore of the Ultimate Universe on the mutant side in a very fun way that I cannot wait to see what happens next. Plus, Black Widow is working with this version's equivalent of like maybe the X-Men outside of, the X-Men in Japan, obviously, that are being formed. But it is really, really, really nice. I like that we're getting more of Logan's past as part of the opposition and his bond with these other characters that otherwise would have been the X-Men in this timeline if the maker didn't change things. I love the visual representation of Logan fighting against the brainwashing subconsciously, and I just really cannot wait to see how this universe pans out and how this storyline affects the vast majority of these titles going forward. But let me know your thoughts on these issues in the comments below, and what you think is going to happen next in Ultimate Wolverine, and how that'll affect the wider mutant storyline going on in the Ultimate Universe. And as always, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel, and shows you want to see more. Also, let me know if you want me to do single issue reviews of Ultimate Wolverine, or would you like larger videos of me going over batches of the issues like this one? Let me know. And don't worry, I'll get back to Ultimate X-Men soon. I'm planning on covering those issues in a batch as well, so don't worry, that's coming very soon.